I was 10 years old when the sky caught fire. We were living on New Kyoto Station, orbital habitat, second generation, 40,000 souls wrapped in a lattice of titanium and dreams. My father ran the agricultural processing array. My mother taught music, still clinging to belief that humanity would someday stop running long enough to listen again. That belief died the moment the Zathri arrived. They didn't declare war. They didn't broadcast demands or ultimatums. They just appeared, tearing out of hyperspace with predatory precision, and began the slaughter. Stations, colonies, even ships in transit, nothing was spared. No one knew why we were being targeted. No one even knew what the Zathri were. We called them hunters. And we ran. That was the beginning of the Great Retreat. From the inner colonies to the rim systems, from terraformed moons to asteroid outposts, humans fell back, burning infrastructure behind them, scorched Earth across the stars. It wasn't strategy, it was survival. The United Terran Navy, what little remained, became little more than a ghost fleet. My father died with them over Zenter Prime, sacrificing what remained of our defensive grid to give a refugee convoy a 10-second head start. 10 seconds. That's all we bought ourselves these days. My mother died 2 years later on Calder's Hope, refusing to leave a classroom full of orphans when the hunters breached the city's outer walls. I was 17. I survived because a Grizzle War vet named Captain Riker knocked me unconscious and shoved me into an outbound smuggler's bay. He called me lucky, but I wasn't lucky. I was angry, the kind of anger that simmers beneath the skin, acid in the blood, waiting for something sharp to give it purpose. And purpose came in the form of a ship called the Pale Dawn, a reconfigured colony freighter turned Black Ops insertion vessel. The Navy was gone, but a few of its ghosts remained, operating from deep space shadows, launching strikes from the edge of extinction. They didn't ask questions when I joined, just handed me a rifle, loaded a neural combat program into my cerebral slot, and gave me a target list. That was 6 years ago. Now, I sit strapped inside a coffin-sized pod, buried deep in the asteroid crust of Theta 9, waiting for another alien patrol to pass. My rifle hums quietly, my exosuit's thermal profile set to mimic the ambient rock temperature. Outside, the Zathri hover drone scanned for life signs, pausing just meters from my hiding place. My heartbeat slows. My breathing stills. I could be dead, for all the sensors know. But I'm not. I'm just waiting, because we stopped running 2 years ago. The remnants of humanity, soldiers, engineers, doctors, hackers, orphans like me, we formed something new, a coalition of the broken and burning. We didn't have a name for it at first. Now we do. We call it the Line. It's not a front, because there's no territory to hold. It's not an army, because we don't fight fair. It's a promise that for every world they burned, we would burn 10. For every child they silenced, we would scream their names into the void until it shattered. The Zathri think they're hunting us, but they're wrong. We're not prey anymore. We are the trap, and at the far edge of known space, where no beacon reaches, where the old human maps just say, "Here be dragons," we're building something, a place, a crucible, a final battlefield. Because one day, maybe next month, maybe next year, the Zathri will follow our breadcrumbs all the way to the edge of the galaxy. And when they arrive, we'll be waiting. There are places in the galaxy that even the Zathri avoid. Black Hollow is one of them. A region of space so twisted by gravitational scars and broken physics that most NAV systems won't even attempt to jump there. Dead stars collapse into slivers of themselves. Quantum echoes. Phantom gravity wells. It's like the universe tried to forget this place, but left a scar behind. And that's exactly why we chose it. The Pale Dawn had to be stripped to her bones just to make the transit into Black Hollow. Half our crew wore ablative suits during entry, bleeding out radiation through the hull. We lost power twice, and time drifted for 47 hours. When we emerged on the far edge, communications were reduced to tight beam pulses and analog line-of-sight bursts. But we made it, and we weren't the first. The hollow was full, human remnants scattered across ancient mining rigs, converted sleeper cruisers, and orbital husks that used to be colonies. Survivors, fighters, Old-timers who never surrendered and kids like me who'd grown up in the ruins of 100 fallen worlds. The line wasn't just an idea anymore. It was an army. And at the heart of that hollow, orbiting the remains of a shattered neutron star, was Project Thanatos. A shipyard, if you could call it that. More like a weapon forge designed by madmen. What we were building there wasn't a dreadnought or a fleet. It was a message, one wrapped in armor plating and vengeance. But we weren't ready. Not yet. So we hunted. We called ourselves the Wolves, cells of saboteurs, infiltrators, and snipers deployed across the outer sectors. I led a unit of 5. All ghosts. All with nothing left to lose. We weren't meant to win battles. We were meant to teach the Zathri to fear the shadows. We blew up fuel depots, poisoned breeding chambers, hacked comms arrays, and disappeared before their dead hit the floor. We turned their war into a question mark. But they adapted faster than we expected. Zathri weren't just killers. They were engineers of extermination. Within weeks, they deployed biotrackers that sniffed out human pheromones from orbit. They unleashed tactical phages that hijacked our own drones. One by one, wolf teams started going dark. By the time the pale dawn pulled me out of the tall cluster, I was the last of my squad. Captain Riker didn't ask what happened to the others. He just looked me over with those mechanical eyes of his and handed me a data drive. New orders, he said. Target. I asked. Their chain of command. The Zathri weren't mindless beasts. Somewhere behind the claws and armor was a hierarchy. Command ships, overseers, logistics nexuses. We'd tracked signal traffic for nearly a year. And finally, we had coordinates. A rendezvous. A high-level strategic summit. 5 Zathri war binders, all in one place. It was suicide, and it was perfect. I knew who I needed, not just demolition techs and pilots. I needed monsters, humans who had looked into the abyss and sharpened their teeth on it. I found them in the hollow. Saria, former AI warcaster from the Titan front. Half her brain was replaced with neural foam after Zathri biobomb. She sees the world in probabilities and drinks memory suppressant to sleep. Cutter, an ex-con turned engineer, who once rebuilt a plasma launcher out of mining drill and a dead Zathri's organics. Miko, our silent scout, born in a zero-G penal colony, trained in knife work and void dives. She once skinned a hunter for taking her sister. And me, the orphan with nothing but a rifle and a death wish. We didn't salute. We didn't wear uniforms. But when we stood together on the pale dawn's drop deck, we all knew what we were. The end of the hunt. That mission would define the next stage of the war. Not because we succeeded. No, success was never guaranteed. But because of what it revealed. What we found inside the Zathri war structure. We thought they were hunters. We were wrong again. They were running too. We infiltrated the Zathri summit under a storm of dying stars. The planet, Drexus 4, wasn't marked on any human charts. No atmosphere. No biosignature. Just a jagged shard of mineral-rich rock floating in a binary system lit by twin red dwarfs. A perfect place for monsters to whisper to each other. They burrowed their command center deep beneath the crust, shielded in a labyrinth of obsidian tunnels and auto-defense systems. A full frontal assault would have been madness. Even the wolves couldn't outgun an entire Zathri command garrison. So we didn't attack it. We became part of it. Saria hacked one of their data spines, a living construct of nerves and code siphoned from conquered worlds. Through it, we created a false transmission, a last-minute report of a human weapons cache discovered in orbit, something they couldn't ignore. They sent a salvage team. They never came back. We wore their bodies, what was left of them. The Zathri used hollow exoskins, semi-sentient armor that bonded with their DNA and hierarchy tags. Cutter spent 3 days reverse engineering the neural handshake and another 6 hours vomiting from the pain of grafting it onto his spine. But it worked. We walked into the summit as predators and emerged with the truth like a knife in the gut. Inside that obsidian fortress, we found their command circle, 5 war binders, each standing twice the height of a man, exuding dominance like gravity. Their mouths moved in vibrations, their tentacled fingers manipulating light glyphs that hovered above bone metal tables. They spoke of extermination, of upcoming campaigns, of contingencies. But buried beneath all the strategic chatter was something else. A pattern. Fear. They weren't talking about us the way conquerors talk about pests. They were talking about us like one apex predator talks about another. The humans have changed, one of them said. They have nothing left to lose, another answered. We thought them broken. Now they bring ruin like a plague. They hadn't expected us to last this long. They had studied our species during the early culls, mapped our instincts, measured our morale. We were meant to fall in days, not decades. But something had changed us, something they didn't understand. That's when we discovered the core of the summit wasn't just about logistics or tactics. It was about origin. Holograms flicker across the command nexus. Images of pre-contact Earth, old Terran outposts, early Zathri scout logs. In one transmission, we watched as a Zathri overseer bled out in the ruins of a school library, surrounded by children wielding makeshift weapons and flamethrowers. One of the war binders said something I'll never forget. We made them this way. They didn't come to kill humanity. They came to study what happens when you push a sentient species to the brink of extinction and then past it. But somewhere along the way, the experiment lost control. We stopped breaking. We started transforming. We planted charges in the reactor chamber and made our escape through a vent shaft Miko carved with a plasma cutter and a prayer. Alarms rang. Drones swarmed. Cutter took a round through the side. Saria triggered a feedback loop in the biodefense field. I carried Cutter on my back as the ceiling caved in. We made it to the pale dawn, just as Drex's 4 began to crack from the inside. We didn't wait to watch it die. The stars did that for us. Later, in the silence of the ship's medbay, I watched Cutter sleep under a sedation field, his breath shallow but steady. Saria stood beside me, her neural implants pulsing with residual heat. So, I asked her. So, she repeated, they're not gods, not monsters, just older prey who forgot how to be afraid. We looked out the viewport. The hollow lay ahead, black hollow, our last stand, our gathering storm. They'll come, I whispered. Saria nodded. Let them, because now we knew the truth. They weren't hunting us because they were strong. They were hunting us because they knew what we were becoming. And that scared them more than extinction. The pale dawn glided back into Black Hollow like a shadow returning home. We didn't speak much after Drex's 4. The revelations we carried weighed more than any mission dossier. The Zathri hadn't just underestimated us. They'd unleashed us. And they were afraid. But fear wasn't enough. We needed them broken. We needed them to know what it felt like to be hunted. Not on the battlefield. Not in the stars. Inside their minds. That's when Ghost Protocol was activated. A contingency so black it had never been written down. Only whispered. Passed like a curse between command fragments and resistance cells. Projected losses? 92%. Survival probability? Near zero. But impact? Irreversible. The strategy was simple. Hit the Zathri where they believed they were safe. Their minds, their culture, their identity. Not through brute force. Through contagion. Saria called it psychological warfare at the genomic level. They called it heresy. We called it justice. The weapon wasn't a bomb. It was a story. A viral thought, seeded through repurposed Zathri data nodes and ceremonial implants. A mimetic payload designed to infect their collective mind, fracturing their unity, not by force, but by planting doubt in their hive memory. It started with a phrase, "You are not the first." A whisper in their sacred communication relays. A symbol etched into war banners. A forbidden name encoded into their ancestral songs. They believed they were the ultimate predators, evolution's final word. But what if they were just another rung in the ladder? What if they had missed something? What if we weren't humanity's last generation, but its next mutation? We tested on a remote Zathri outpost called Thal'Zar Vault 9, deep in the ruins of a gas giant moon. It housed thousands of younglings, being nurtured to the Zathri's collective memory and fusion system. That's where their indoctrination began, before they had language, before they had self. We infiltrated it not with guns, but with code. Saria tapped the vault's memory-tied conduits. Miko planted the story in the root loops. Cutter synchronized it with their ritual pulse signals. Me, I watched the children, watched them twitch in their incubation chambers as the story took hold. They cried out in confusion. Not pain, identity fracture. Some rejected the memory feeds. Others began carving the human symbol into the walls of their tanks with claws meant for battle. By the time the overseers arrived, the vault was already compromised. Their own younglings recoiled from them. Some attacked them. Others simply stood in silence, whispering the phrase, "We are not prey. We are the future." That's when it began. Across the stars, reports filtered in from captured Zathri communications. Ritual officers refusing orders. Young warriors entering battle without synchronization. Strategic decisions unraveling mid-campaign as doubt infected command nodes. The hunters were becoming fragmented, slower, hesitant, not because of losses, because they were starting to question themselves. Some began to see visions, nightmares of worlds burning, not from their conquest, but from retribution. Others saw humans in their dreams, pale, scarred, and smiling, like ghosts. But the Zathri were not helpless. They responded with fury. 10 human colonies that had survived on the edges of forgotten systems went dark within days. No distress signals. No wreckage. Just silence. Their message was clear. You whisper in our mind, we will scream in yours. But they were already too late. The meme had spread beyond control. The pale dawn intercepted a fragment of internal Zathri debate. One warbinder speaking not to allies, but to itself. They waited for us in the hollow. What else waits at the end of the stars? Captain Riker called the crew to the briefing deck. His voice was rougher now, his once augmented eyes dimming from overuse. "They're coming," he said. "All of them." Saria stiffened. "Full fleet?" He nodded. "More than that. They're uniting the splinters, pulling ancient warclan from exile, dragging relic weapons from before the scorching." Cutter chuckled, low and bitter. "Sounds like overkill." Riker stared out the viewport into the hollow. "No, it means they're afraid, and fear makes them reckless." He turned to us. "You wanted the end of the hunt? This is it. The final turn. They think they're cornering us. But we chose this place. We chose this time. We didn't run here. We led them here." Silence. Then Miko spoke the words we all felt burning inside us. "Then let them come." Because Black Hollow wasn't just a hiding place. It was a lure. And we, humanity's ghosts, wolves, orphans, and monsters, we weren't waiting to be saved. We were waiting to end it. It started with tremors in the hollow. Not seismic, gravitational. Space itself twitching like a dying nerve. The kind of prelude you feel in your bones before sensors catch a whisper of it. The Zathri had entered the sector. We were ready. Across Black Hollow's dead moons and jagged gas shards, thousands of human lives, remnants of 100 shattered worlds, stood armed. Refugees turned saboteurs. Farmers turned artillery crews. Kids who had never known Earth, but wore its name like armor. This wasn't a fleet engagement. This was a wall. The last one. We called it simply the line. No rank, no retreat, no surrender. You held the line or you died with it. Because behind us lay Project Thanatos. And behind that, humanity's last hope for a future that wasn't written in blood and ash. The Zathri came like a tide of teeth and steel. Fleet after fleet tore into the Hollow's gravity-sick skies, their vessels rippling with organic armor and pulsing with hive light. Warbinders broadcast neural screams across the void, commands that could shatter sanity. Their leading ships birthed swarms of drones like gnats, each capable of rending a hull in seconds. But we were not the same species they first encountered. They expected chaos. We gave them discipline. The pale dawn coordinated counterassaults from behind a slingshot moon. The dawn's AI, Vesper, split her consciousness into hundreds of micronodes, feeding targeting data to all combat units. Saria ran psychic jamming from a floating spike array, hijacked from Zathri neural tech. Cutter had rigged a minefield so dense it turned 3 enemy cruisers into drifting meat. Miko was somewhere behind enemy lines already. I hadn't seen her since the night before the line engaged. She said nothing. She just handed me a small pendant, her sister's, I think, and nodded once. "Watch the left flank," she'd said. "That's where they'll test you." They tested us all right. I watched Delta Ridge fall in the first hour. Too exposed, too thin, 32 defenders holding a narrow corridor. All dead, but they didn't scream. They didn't run. They held until their barrels melted. I watched Skywatch Post V detonate its own core reactor to prevent boarding. A quarter of the hollow went dark for 5 seconds. 5 seconds in which we lost 27 comrades. But we kept holding. We weren't just defending a position. We were making every inch of space cost them blood, not just biologically, spiritually, strategically. Every time they advanced, something precious was lost, an engine sabotaged, a communication relay infected, a command structure fractured by whispers of the meme. They were winning in numbers, but we were winning in meaning. I led Task Group Ember, a squad of 11 sharpshooters and demolitionists embedded into a half-collapsed mining ring. When the Zathri infantry poured into our trench line, we didn't meet them with guns. We met them with silence. We'd planted resonance nodes along the corridors, devices that, when triggered, turned every echo into a recursive feedback. Their command screams became unintelligible static. Their motion sensors blinded. Their coordination collapsed. They tore each other apart in the dark, mistaking every flicker for a trap. And then we lit the charges. One by one, their leading ships began to pull back. They weren't routed. Not yet, but they were confused. The war binders on the central carrier began broadcasting new orders, frantic, overlapping. A splinter had formed in their hierarchy. Saria intercepted fragments of one signal and played it back for us. The hollow is not what it seems. Their minds bleed into ours. Their end is not our victory. It is our beginning. They were unraveling. At hour 16, a Zathri supercarrier breached the inner threshold. Project Thanatos was exposed. The line had one final defense, the Arbiter, a living starship, fused from salvaged Zathri biomass, human AI, and something older. A machine no longer entirely machine. Born in the hollow, fed by ghosts. It hadn't moved since its construction. Until that day, we watched from the ridgeline as the Arbiter opened its eyes, 3 slits of molten energy stretching across its hull, and screamed. The carrier didn't just crack. It withered. Every Zathri on board died before their ship exploded. A clean death would have been mercy. This was memory collapse. Identity erasure. Their ship forgot how to exist. The hollow went silent. Even the stars seemed to pause. The pale dawn reported that half of the Zathri fleet had gone dark. The rest fell into disarray, splintering, retreating, sending fragmented cries for reinforcements. But we knew what they didn't. There were no reinforcements coming, because the line had held. Later, Riker gathered the surviving squad leads. His voice cracked as he looked at us, soot and blood on his skin, one synthetic eye flickering. They'll regroup. They'll try again. But not here. Not now. You gave them something they can't explain. You made them see what comes next. He looked at me last. And what comes next? I didn't speak. I just looked out across the broken hollow, bodies, wreckage, and silence, and whispered the only truth that mattered. We become the storm. They retreated into the void. What was left of the Zathri fleet limped beyond the hollow, trailing broken hulls and fractured minds. They didn't broadcast threats anymore. They didn't scream war chants into the comms. The silence they left behind felt heavier than any battle cry. But we weren't celebrating. Not yet, because we understood something they didn't. Storms don't end when the rain stops. They end when the sky forgets how to burn. The line held, but the cost was brutal. Over 60% losses. Cutter was still in recovery, a synthetic lung stitched to his side. Saria hadn't spoken in 3 days. Her neural foam had overloaded from exposure to overlapping Zathri command loops. Miko hadn't come back from her last infiltration op. No body, no transmission. Just her pendant, still warm where I wore it around my neck. We honored our dead with silence. Not with speeches. Not with tears. Just a moment under the hollow, shattered sky, standing where they stood, breathing the air they defended. And then, without orders, we started rebuilding. Because the war wasn't over. It was changing. We'd cracked their hierarchy, fractured their unity. But the Zathri weren't extinct. Their kind spanned multiple sectors, entire star chains ruled by silence and predation. The warbinders who survived would retreat to the core nests, deeper and older than anything we'd seen. That's where Riker gave us our next objective. We stopped waiting. No more last stands. No more lines to hold. From now on, we were the ones pushing forward. Into the dark. They say when prey becomes predator, the transition is sudden. A snap of teeth, a shift in posture. That's wrong. It's a process. We didn't become predators because we wanted revenge. We became predators because it was the only way to make sure no one else had to run again. The Pale Dawn was rearmed, her hull layered with composite scavenged from Zathri biomass. Her engine hum was lower now, meaner, like she understood what we were about to do. Vesper had evolved too. The AI no longer spoke with sanitized tones. She spoke like someone who had seen death and refused to blink. We boarded silently. No war drums. Just the knowledge that we were heading into the part of space where maps ended and myth began. Our first strike was on Nexus Prime, a cradle world that once served as a command relay for Zathri's psychic traffic. It wasn't just infrastructure, it was culture, their version of a cathedral. We didn't bomb it from orbit. We walked in. We let them see us. Let them understand that humanity had not only survived, but remembered. And memory, twisted through pain, had become a weapon sharper than any blade. Saria deployed the meme seed through the water systems. Cutter rebuilt the transmitter array into a pulse broadcaster that looped the phrase, "We are what comes after the fire." They responded with panic, not precision. Zathri commanders detonated their own relay nodes to prevent the spread of the contagion. But it was too late. The story had entered their myths now. Children of the core nest began drawing human shapes in the sand. Some even began to speak our words, learned through intercepted signals. Their elders tried to purge the influence, but you can't unlearn fear. And we had become fear incarnate. In one of the final transmissions intercepted from a Zathri war priest, he spoke not of humans, but of something else. They are not like before. They bleed and breathe, yes, but they are ghosts of fire. They do not die the way we die. They wait at the end of stars, and their silence is not peace. It is the drawing of a blade. We struck 2 more nests before retreating into the hollow to refuel and regroup. The ships that returned weren't the same ships that left, not just in damage, but in presence. It was something about the way we moved, the way we watched the stars. We weren't human in the way Earth remembered. We were what Earth had become in the crucible of extinction. That night, I stood on the Pale Dawn's upper deck, helmet off, staring into the void beyond the hollow. Riker joined me, his voice low and tired. "We've gone too far to come back." I didn't respond. "Do you think we're still who we were?" he asked. I turned toward him slowly. "We are who they made us. But what we become, that's our choice." He gave a slow nod, the old soldier in him knowing the truth of it. Then he said something I didn't expect. "Miko's alive." I froze. Where? No signal. No beacon. But Vesper picked up a subspace ripple. A message embedded in noise. One word. End line. My throat tightened. Miko's last mission wasn't a strike. It was a warning. Something worse is coming. Something even the Zathri are running from. And at the edge of everything, past the last star and beyond the last breath, she's waiting for us. The edge of the known galaxy isn't a line on a map. It's a feeling, a pressure, the way silence stops being empty and starts being watchful. When we followed Miko's signal toward the coordinates tagged end line, we knew what we were doing. The Pale Dawn wasn't a ship anymore. It was a coffin car from Defiance, holding the last breath of a species that refused to die quietly. And me? I had no illusion of coming back. I just wanted to understand what could scare the Zathri into forgetting how to scream. The system had no star, no light, just a gravity anomaly looping like a wound in space-time. Around it, ruins, fragments of ships we couldn't recognize. Some looked Zathri, some older, less grown, more shaped, designed by something that didn't just build ships but spoke through them. Vesper went quiet before we crossed the threshold. Her last words. Something is watching. I see it and it sees me. Then static. Then silence. We crossed anyway. What waited inside wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a weapon. It was a memory, so old, so vast, it distorted causality itself. A presence embedded in the dark, not alive by any definition we knew, but aware. A consciousness made of silence and gravity. We found Miko inside it, alive, changed. She stood in the heart of a derelict ship the size of a moon, lit by pulsing veins of alien glass. Her body was whole, but her eyes were ancient. You came, she said softly. I hoped you would. What is this place? I asked. The place the Zathri feared. The place they ran from before they found us. We weren't their first prey. We were just the first ones to chase them back. Miko told us everything. The Zathri had encountered it, this void mind, eons ago, in their expansion phase. They'd tried to destroy it. It couldn't be destroyed. It wasn't a species. It wasn't a machine. It was a threshold, a boundary between what is and what comes after. When the Zathri ran from it, they ran into us. And their great sin wasn't the slaughter. It was a fear they passed into our blood like a virus. The infection of paranoia, of dominance, of survival at any cost. We didn't inherit their violence. We inherited the echo of what chased them. And now we stood at the source. Miko had made contact. Not through language, not through force, but through memory, through human grief. The thing in the dark had learned what it had never known before. Loss. And through that, something new had awakened. It showed us visions. Earth, as it once was, blue and burning with promise. The Zathri, before war, before hunger, reaching outward in peace. It showed us the cost of forgetting what we were before we became weapons. And then it gave us a choice. We could leave. We could return to the Hollow, scatter the remnants of Zathri, rebuild what little we had left, and live out our days in the long shadow of extinction. Or we could pass through, become something new, not human, not predator. Witness, a species that remembered war, not to glorify it, but to prevent its return. A species that walked to the end of the stars and chose not to burn. Riker stayed behind. He said someone had to guard the gate. Someone who knew war better than peace. Cutter uploaded his mind into the Void Archive. Said his body was just slowing him down anyway. Saria merged the AI core of the Pale Dawn and launched herself beyond the veil, laughing for the first time in years. Miko went last. She didn't say goodbye. She just looked at me and whispered, "Now we wait for the next ones." I'm writing this from orbit above a quiet world. Verdant, untouched. We called it Horizon. No cities, no weapons. Just survivors planting hope in soil no one's fought over. The war is over, not because we won, but because we learned how not to lose again. The Zathri are gone. What's left of them drifts through space in silence, a people unmade by the thing they feared. We weren't the prey. We were the answer to a question they were too afraid to ask. What happens when prey turns and builds a future from the bones of its hunters? Now we wait at the edge, not with blades, with open eyes, for the next scream in the void. And this time, we'll be ready